this year I'm trying to do a few more updates on what's going on with the electric eel wheel and other related spinning tools. So that's really the point of this video. But before I get into all of those updates, I wanted to give you a little insight into sort of this really big pipeline that I have as far as products go. So the way it tends to work is I do some very rough prototypes for new ideas that I have. And this is really as fast of development as I can do. Right over here, I've got this circuit board that I'm working on, and I'm just sort of prototyping how much power this screen uses. And, that's all I'm trying to figure out with that circuit. So that's a very rough prototype, but it's pretty important for my product that I'm working on that I mentioned in the previous video, the yarn counter, I think I called it. Yeah. So that's very early prototypes where, it's not a fully functional design, but it's something that lets me gain knowledge and realize if a product is going to work. Then I have sort of that early prototype that's fully functional, and it really tells me if it's working well. And if that all looks good, then I'll go to another prototype that I think is sort of a manufacturable prototype. And that takes a lot of things into account, like making sure that the 3D printing is going to be injection moldable, that the electronics are easy to assemble and low cost. I'll swap out a lot of parts to save price at that point. So then at that point, I have a prototype that's pretty representative of how things are going to work. And that's often when I'll show prototypes. Sometimes I show the earlier prototypes, but I'm always going to show sort of a fully functional prototype. And an example of a product I've done that for recently is the electric eel wheel 6. And then after that, it sort of goes into manufacturing, and that takes maybe 6 months or so, maybe a little bit more, before it's like final samples are approved and I've sort of happy with sort of the product that's going out, and do minor updates after that point in future batches and stuff. So I've got this whole pipeline of products, where I'm doing the early prototypes, I'm doing sort of the design for manufacturing stage, and then the, big batches of orders that I can actually sell. So I'm sort of working on all of those at the same time, but they're different products at different stages in that pipeline. So it's not uncommon for me to start talking about stuff a year before it's going to be ready. And I just want people to sort of get a grasp on the fact that, it feels like I'm jumping around between different projects, but in reality, I have to be doing all these things at the same time, or there's going to be these huge gaps where there's nothing available that's sort of new. It also is the case that sort of that very early prototyping takes the most time, because once things get close to manufacturing, it's a lot of waiting on my end, and factories that I'm working with and whatnot are then sort of doing most of the work, and I just have to sort of approve it and review samples and stuff. So while that takes a long time, it's not a lot of my effort. So instead of, just sitting there and not doing anything, I'll spend a lot of my time working on these early prototypes while this other stuff is happening that's sort of later in the pipeline. So anyways, with that out of the way, now I want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that I'm working on. So the newest project that I'll be shipping soon is the electric eel wheel Nano 1.1. Now this is a fairly minor update from the electric eel wheel Nano 1. The big improvements I've already talked about are it has a new motor, and it's got some new slide hooks. A bunch of other things have been adjusted. I'll actually be doing several videos about this in the near future once I've got them in stock. They're actually on a boat being shipped to me right now, so hopefully I'll be able to talk about that in some separate videos pretty soon. But I wanted to let people know that is definitely coming, and when the Nanos come, I'm also getting many boxes of the new motors, and I'll show people how to upgrade your existing electric eel wheel Nanos to the new motor if you're interested in that. Oh yeah, one other thing for the Nano is this is going to be the first time that I have to pay the 15% tariff on parts that I'm importing from China. So that's kind of a bummer for my business, but it does look like I'll be able to, I'm going to try really hard to keep the price the same. I think I can do that. I'm thinking I'm going to drop basically 1 bobbin. So instead of 7 bobbins, it'll be 6 bobbins for the bigger package. And I'm also probably going to get rid of the smaller package with only 3 bobbins. It didn't seem like many people were buying that version, or there weren't that many people buying that version. So I'll probably consolidate into a single version, and it'll make things simpler. A lot of people were getting confused, or they would order the wrong package. And I think this will simplify things, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in a future video as well. Now, just last week, I did a video about this yarn cart counter project, and the feedback from that was amazing. I was not expecting people to be as excited about that project as you were. So I'm definitely going forward with that. I've been actually spending a lot of time working on the circuit board design for that. I think that really optimizing for power usage so that, just some double or triple A batteries last a really long time is something that's worth putting time into. And that is something that on this kind of a project I want to put in early. Like, it affects how, like, the microcontroller that I'm using and a bunch of other things. So it'll kind of be slow going to get the circuit designed, but once it's designed, I think it'll be, relatively far along, and it won't need many updates for the final version. At least that's my hope. But that's something that I'm spending a lot of my time on right now, because I think it's a project I'm really interested in, and I was really excited to see how many other people were. So it's definitely something I'll spend time on, and I'll do a video about that when I have something useful to share. Probably when I have a working prototype is what I'm guessing, and that'll be a little while. There's a lot of steps to get to that point, but rest assured that I'm working on it. So another big project that I've done many videos about already is the electric eel wheel 6. Now, my testers are really enjoying that version, and it's something that I'm super excited about. It's definitely the best performing spinning wheel I've ever worked on. And I've actually just sent, last week, I've sent the molds, or I've sent the digital files so that they can make the steel injection molds that form the plastic parts. And there's actually 14, I was sort of surprised by this, but there's 14 unique plastic parts that are needed for the electric eel wheel 6, which is a lot more than the Nano, but it's going to be, around $250. So more expensive, and it allows me to make more molds and make better parts and stuff. So I really think that that's going to pay off. And in the past, I've always done all of these molds after the Kickstarter because they're pretty expensive. But this time I've decided to do the molds ahead of time so that I can better estimate when the product will be ready. And it will also let me show samples in the video that are much more representative of what the final will look like. It actually should look either identical or nearly identical to what the final ones will be like. So I'm pretty excited about that change. I'm still targeting to ship or to do the Kickstarter in April and then ship later this year. I'm hoping that schedule stays on track. There's actually been some recent delays due to the coronavirus in China. Now, that's thankfully it's not affecting any of my friends over there, any of their family, any of the coworkers. So it's mostly been restricted to certain regions of China, and those are not the regions where the people I know work. But it is a serious thing over there. They've actually extended their spring festival holidays, or the government has. So that's sort of why I'm running into delays. But, I'm just telling them definitely follow what your government's saying, because it's a serious thing over there. And my heart really goes out to them and their families, and I hope everyone continues to be okay. But so far, everything is good for all of the people that I know over in China. So I'm really happy about that, and I hope that continues, and I hope the virus doesn't affect too many more people. So beyond that, none of the projects are very far along, but I'm definitely thinking about and prototyping some of these other things I'm always working on a new spinning wheel, one that would accommodate a level winding system. And I've actually come up with a new drive system that I don't think has ever been done before. So those are things that I'm looking into, but they're way far away. Not even, I mean, I don't even know if they're going to work out yet, but I'm working on things like that. There's a drum carter is something that people commonly request, and I'm constantly looking for low cost suppliers of the carding cloth. That's kind of the hardest thing to get at an economical price. That's the big reason that drum carters are always so expensive. So if I can't find a good source for the carding cloth, I probably wouldn't do a drum carter. But I'm always on the lookout, and hopefully someday I'll make some contact with a textile manufacturer that's able to provide that at a good price, and then I'd get serious about making prototypes. But until I find something like that, I probably won't be doing too much prototyping with drum carters. Sock knitter, that was something that generated a lot of interest in sort of my discussions on Facebook recently and on Ravelry. So that's something I would love to do, but it's a really big project, and to do it the way I would like to do it would kind of put its price point. I mean, there's like really cheap solutions on Amazon that are just plastic, but you can't make socks with them because there's not enough hooks. And then there's the all steel versions that are really good at making socks, but they're, like $2,000. So I think I'd make something, between those kinds of products, and it would, use metal hooks, but maybe plastic for some of the other parts or something. And that would be fun, but it's so much work that I'm just not sure when I'll have time to work on something like that. But, definitely keep requesting it, and I think that's the kind of a thing that eventually someday I'll get to it, but right now I'm just sort of spending some time understanding how they work and making sure that there aren't like certain must-have features that I'm missing. But I think I have a pretty good grasp on how these sock knitters work at this point, although I still haven't seen one in action. That's something on my to-do list. I gotta go to a festival sometime where somebody's using a sock knitting machine and ask to take a close look at one when it's actually in operation. That would be that would make sure that I could verify I understand how everything's working at that point. But yeah, sock knitting machine. Cone winder. I thought about doing a ball winder, but it sounds like I know there's a lot of ball winders, but if I did an electric cone winder at an affordable price, that's something that's not really on the market. And it would allow people to free up their bobbins, maybe store things on cones. I could make cones really cheap with these plastic manufacturers that I have in China. So, I mean, they would be really cheap to make. So, if I made a cone machine, I think that would be just a good place to store yarn. And it's really useful if you make a sock knitting machine, because you really want the yarn coming off in a very consistent manner, and it seems like cones are sort of the best way to do that. And I think I could make a really clever cone knitting machine or cone winder it's economical and I think does a really good job at the winding. But it's not something I put any time into a prototype on. It's just on my short list of to-dos. I've got a really long list of to-dos, but I won't go over that whole list in this video. It'd get very long. I'm thinking about, maybe doing a Swift someday. I'm not sure if it would be a squirrel cage one, which is sort of that long, thin one, or if it would be more traditional Swift. Again, I would probably electrify it. I can kind of electrify things for not that much money. So there's this huge premium on tools that use a motor for some reason, and it doesn't really add that much cost for me, at least. I don't know what everyone else making spinning tools, why it costs so much for them to put a motor in it, but for me, like, getting rid of all of that mechanical hand crank stuff and then replacing that with a motor, makes it a little bit more expensive for me, but not a lot more expensive, because I save all the complexity on the hand crank stuff. So anyways, that's one other thing. Cotton gin was something that's requested, and I think that would be fun, but I haven't really researched that at all yet. So that's on my sort of pretty short list. And then there's a huge list of other things people are requesting. If you have any other things that you think I should put on my list that I haven't mentioned today, definitely let me know, and I'll consider it. Thanks for watching.